don't say to yourself, I'm going to write a book. Just say, I'm going to write my stories down. And then see where that naturally leads, because that's the way I did it, which was helpful. I didn't realize at the time, but it was helpful.
Hello, and welcome to Self Talk. I'm your host, Rachel Astarte. Today, my guest is Jill Phillips. She is a family storyteller with a passion to inspire families to connect through the telling of their past. She started life on Lamlash Street in London, emigrated to Canada, where she obtained her master's degree and spent 30 years working as an occupational therapist and a hospital manager. She was motivated by her family's experiences in 1960s London and shares their stories in her book, Lamlash Street, A Portrait of 1960s Post-War London Through One Family's Story. Thank you so much, Jill, for being here.
Oh, it's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just, there's a lot for us to talk about, but I'd love for you to start with telling us a little bit about your book, but also what inspired you to write it.
My book, as you mentioned earlier, set in the 1960s London. It's a way of life that's gone now, and all of my family were around me at the time. So for me, it was my whole world at that particular moment in time. And one of the reasons I wrote the book is not only did I want to keep the family stories, because as you probably know, when you go to weddings and family members get together, the older generation tend to talk about the old times. So all those stories that were told and retold, I really wanted to make sure they were never lost, because as one by one my aunts and uncles were dying, and in the end, as it so happened, my mum who was the youngest of the 12 brothers and sisters, was the one who went last. And so I wanted to get all of those stories down while I was still people I could talk to about those days. I also thought it was really relevant for people now, younger people in particular now, to get some sort of concept of what life was like in those days. I know my daughter's 31, and I know there's a sense of things are really complex these days and it's a really hard time. Well, they were hard in those days as well, but in a different way. They were harder because we didn't have all these labour-saving devices, for example. So laundry would take the whole day. Shopping was a daily occurrence because nobody had freezers. So those sorts of things. Now we just know for laundry, just pop a pod and press the button and then the laundry does itself. Right. Well, that's not the way it was. So although those are more basic challenges, they still did very much play into your everyday life. Somebody had to spend the whole day doing the laundry. Somebody had to go and make sure there was food for the next meal. So I wanted people to get that perspective on life as well. I didn't want that way of life to be lost. There were some really good things about the way of life, and my whole family lived within 10 minutes of walking of where I lived. And so I was surrounded by aunts and uncles and cousins, and if your parents are having a bad day, you just go and talk to a cousin or an aunt and they'd sympathise with you, and they'd just go and talk to your parents and sort things out. So in a sense, it was like being raised by the family village in a sense. So I wanted that feeling and that way of life to be captured. And I did that by writing down partly my recollections, but talking to my mum as well and my cousins and people that were around at that time. And also tried to make it fairly interesting. So I put a few quirky things in there. So, for example, when I learned how to swim, the swimming instructor had never been in the pool in her life, I don't believe. She was fully clothed in day clothes. And the way we were taught to swim, no technique, we used to have to swim around the edge of the pool, just, breaststroke or whatever you wanted. And if she thought that we were going to run into trouble, she would have a broom handle about 3 inches away from our reach. And if she thought you were about to drown, she'd bring the broom handle back so you could hold onto the broom handle, then she'd pull you over to one side. And if she thought you're doing okay, she'd move it further away. So the only way I learned to swim was really, the will to live, really. So I wouldn't drown on the way around.
Sink or swim.
Exactly, sink or swim, exactly, yeah. So those sorts of feelings and stories I wanted to have captured somehow. But I didn't, in all fairness, start out to say I'm going to be an author. I just started writing them down, and that's where I began.
Yeah. So it was just important for you to keep these very special stories alive in some way. Yeah.
Yes, it was. And at the time, I thought, well, it'd be nice if I could write these stories down. There wasn't massive amount of support from the family. There was nobody in the family saying, oh, that's an excellent idea. It was just like, oh, that's what you're doing, is it? I was like, yes. And then I thought, well, if I can just get this down on paper, and then if I have one copy, and then maybe a grandchild or somebody of the family would be interested in reading the one copy. And that was the goal in my head at the time. And now it's on Amazon. So and I have websites and things. I didn't really plan this. I didn't expect a lot of it, but I'm so thrilled that I managed to get the stories down and that they're out there and other people can hear about them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And there's a commonality too. You know, when we talk about families and connection, each family has its own, you know, ethos and all of that, but we can also really identify with other people's experiences too. So even though it's about your family, someone reading this might find some recognition in their own experiences as well. And in that way, it can be very connective, I would think.
It is. Yes, I got a lot of comments about like people maybe in the US saying, oh, I was born in London and I read your story and I remembered those old days. And it really helped me to sort of reconnect with my past. So I got a lot of comments like that. One of the most amazing things was, though, one day I was just looking at my phone and this message popped up from Messenger. And this person said, I think I was your neighbour at Lamlash Street from 50 years ago. It's like, what? So we messaged backwards and forwards for like frantic hour. I think, my goodness, this is amazing. Apparently this person was, I think it was about 1 or 2 years old at the time. They weren't, because I was 10 and they were like, what? So I didn't really know them, but they lived right next door. So we lived at 11B. They literally lived right next door. And I said, oh, so how did you come across this information about Lamlash? He said, well, my father passed on. I was looking through the photographs and the papers, clearing up the house, that sort of thing. And then he said to me, and I've come across this photograph. He said, do you know, he said, it's a picture of my mum on the left-hand side of the picture, having a cup of tea. And she said, do you happen to know who this lady is on the right? And I thought, I think that's my mum. And it was.
Wow.
So he sent me a copy of a photograph of outside Lamlash Street, which if the cover of the book actually has a picture of Lamlash Street itself on the very front cover. It's very similar to that picture, except on the left-hand side is this person's mother, and on the right-hand side is my mother, and they're obviously having a gossip over something or other with cups of tea in their hand. And I would suspect that my dad probably took the photograph because my dad was a real amateur photographer. And back in the day when you had to have film and develop photographs were very, very expensive. There's no way that you take a snapshot like that. So I would imagine that my dad took the photo and then he developed it himself. And so that came out of writing the family story, and it was amazing, absolutely amazing. So yes, it does connect you with people.
Yeah, that's amazing. And there's something bigger to your story as well, just your personal story of coming to write this. And did you face any obstacles along the way to publishing this, just internally, like any feeling of, oh, this isn't worth it, or maybe I'm not going to, it's not going to succeed. I'm publishing my first book over the age of 50, can you give any inspiration to people who might be looking to do something similar?
Well, I thought all of those things and about 100 more as well. And it was a struggle. It was a struggle. So, it's all I can say to your listeners and viewers is don't say to yourself, I'm going to write a book. Just say, I'm going to write my stories down and then see where that naturally leads, because that's the way I did it, which was helpful. I didn't realize at the time, but it was helpful. The other thing is, how I did it. I just wrote my stories down. So each page had a different story. Then I go to mum or aunts or whoever and say, do you remember when they used to have the daffodil growing competition in at school? Or do you remember my first boyfriend, Anthony? And I said, what happened to Anthony? Oh, well, he did this and that happened and this happened to the family. So it was more like a conversational thing, like we're doing here, so very conversational. And I'd write down as much as I could remember. And then I got to the point if I had about 25, 30 stories and I had they're like all printed off, spread all over the carpet, thinking, how do I turn this into a book? And so what had happened was, as well as, my uncle had passed on, and he had left us a gift, inheritance gift. And just before Uncle passed on, like 3 months before, actually, I was living in Canada at the time, came over to see Uncle. He was the one who lived at Lamlash Street all those years ago, so really, really close with Uncle. And he said that he had written down some of his, like he was at D-Day, for example, so he'd written down a little summary of some of his war stories. Mm. I said, well, that's nice, Uncle. He said, I would love to publish a book. I said, oh, that's nice. He said, David, that was his nephew. I approached David, but he didn't think it's quite what, he had in mind right now. I said, oh, well, that's fair enough, Uncle. So anyway, poor man passed away 3 months later. We were over here for the funeral, as I said, clear through the flat. Came across, it was a thin notebook with about 10 pages, and in block capital writing was some of his stories. I thought, oh, that's nice.
Wow.
And then when, the will went through and we realised, my brother and I realised we had a gift from Uncle, I thought, well, I've got these other stories written down. I don't know how to form them into a book because I've never done anything like this before. I have no literary friends, nothing. Don't know anybody else personally who's written a book or published. So I thought, what, maybe I'll take a little bit of that money and I'll get a book writing coach. So, which is what I did. So that's what I'd say to your viewers as well is, if you feel that you need the help, don't struggle and don't say to yourself, well, I can't do it. I knew I couldn't do this anyway. But look, we all do that. But if you're able to, get the help that you need, whether you're going to join a group of people who are writers themselves. I went one route of a book coach, but not everyone's in the same situation that they would need that. And the other thing I'd say is, whatever you want to do in life, make sure you get people who have the same mind as you do. So if you want to write a book, connect with people that have written a book or would support you through writing a book. Because your nearest and dearest, when you say, I'm writing down the family stories, may not rush around and say, isn't that an excellent idea? In fact, they might just say, she's lost her mind. Mm-hmm. And, oh, yes, everybody says they're going to write a book, but nobody does it, and all this sort of thing. So don't think because your nearest and dearest have been there and they've supported you through other things in life that they're the right ones to go and do these other things. So if you want to write a book, then go ahead and link with people who are going to do that. When I started running, I started talking to people who were running, who were runners. And that was when I was 65, by the way. My parents again thought I'd lost my mind, right? Oh, what's wrong with her? I don't know. Anyway. And when I did my master's degree when I was 58, everyone at work said, oh, it's a waste of money and time. I don't know why you're doing that at your time of life.
Wow.
I'm going to do this anyway. So, but always connect with the people that are going to support you in what you want to do. Don't hang on to people that are very ambivalent or, oh, isn't that nice? No, you don't want those sort of people. You want the people who are going to say, well, this is what I did. Yeah. And when you have a problem, they will actually listen to what you're saying and understand what you're saying as well.
Yeah, that's a really, really good lesson for people. And I love the inspirational aspect of a lot of these things. It's not that you weren't accomplished before the age of 50. You were doing many important things. Occupational therapy is very important. Managing a hospital is very important. But when you got the motivation to write these stories down, or even the motivation to start running, and you did a 5K, didn't you?
Yes.
That's pretty impressive to train for that and do it. And so I love what you're saying, that if you have the desire to do something, find your people, Find the people who are going to support you. And it doesn't mean that the people who don't understand what you're doing are wrong or bad. It just means they don't get it. And so you need to find the people that are going to lift you up and help encourage you. Some people just don't understand what you're doing. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily, trying to hold you back. Only we can do that, right? We were talking a little bit about that earlier, having that self-talk that says, oh, you'll never do it, or why am I doing this? It's so late. To really push through those messages is very difficult. Did you find that the support that you got from the other people helped you with that self-sabotage or those negative voices in your head? Or what inspired you to keep going, even though you had those messages in your head?
Those people definitely helped. I have a huge number of self-doubts in my head. I think we all do to a large extent, to be honest. We all come from different times, and motivation, I don't think was a word when I was at school. So times are different. It's the people you go to for an honest opinion of how you're doing are the people who are going to say to you, so did you do your training last night for your 5K? Are you going to be running this Saturday morning? Like the people who are going to follow up with you. And also what happens is that if you're, say, that running is a good example. If you're with somebody who is a runner themselves, and the last time you ran, they'll say to you, oh, your time was, they noted what your time was afterwards. Oh, you did 47 minutes and 47 seconds. That's really good, What are you going to do this week? You don't really have a chance to sit there and say, well, I thought I'd give it a miss this week, because their enthusiasm and they're, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you're going to do this week because you've done so well with this. It's like, well, I guess I boxed myself into a corner now. I've got to go and do it. So you want people that are enthusiasts in the area that you want to move into. Mm-hmm. And because we're not all enthusiastic about everything, but those are the people that are going to say, well, have you done it yet? Oh, and they'll say things like, oh, that was really good. Or, well, you probably need to work on that a little bit more, because they really want the best for you. So it's really important. I have huge. Oh, it is extremely.
Yeah, beautiful. I'd like to shift just a little bit, because this is also really important as a woman who's in her 50s as well. As you were when you
yes, I can still remember that far back.
In your heart, you're 50. But this message we get from society that when you hit a certain age, you're useless, pretty much. The way that you had put it was that you're sort of expected to blend into the background when you hit a certain age. Now, as someone who feels very young at heart, as I assume you do as well, this is very damaging and oppressive when in fact, I would like to think that as we get older, we have more to offer the world because of our experiences and because we're able to kind of temper some of the youthful attitudes that we might have had in our 20s, 30s, and maybe even 40s. So could you speak a little bit to why this thinking about particularly older women is so outdated and harmful?
I hate ageism. It drives me cracked, absolutely cracked. And you're absolutely right. It's out there everywhere. One of the reasons I used to be quite open about my age. I'm not too bad now, but I stopped talking about my age because people tend to see the number and they don't see you as a person. And even you find it in some families, it's awful. I mean, I even see it myself. So somebody say of my age, and they've say got grandkids or something, and the grandkids say, oh, well, no, Nanny, you shouldn't be doing that sort of thing. You sit down there and we'll do this and we'll do that. And I don't have any grandchildren, so maybe the difference, but I absolutely agree with you. We should be doing exactly what we want to in life. It may take a bit longer because we're a little older, but we are wiser. And I firmly believe this, and it's my belief, is that because we have lived so much life and we have so much experience behind us, when we decide we're going to do something, it's not going to take us that long to do it because we have a lot of the information in our head already. Yeah. And what we don't have in our head, we have the internet. So I firmly believe that the older you get, the more quickly you can work through the process. So the running thing, with me, it was fairly easy because I've been in healthcare for 30 years, I've got my degrees and so on. So I knew about physical effect of exercise on the body and nutrition and all. We all know that basic, but I knew all that stuff. So when I decided I was going to start running, it was only like 3 months. I got checked out physically by the doctor because and I had a personal trainer at the time as well. That's the other thing, because I really wanted to get in shape. Mm-hmm. And she really helped as well. Like I said, I went to the expert, in the area that I wanted to improve in. She was really good. And I said, well, you don't think I'm too old at this age? She said, no, I don't think so. She said, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, that's good. She said, just go and get checked out. So I went to the doctor and went to my cardiologist and said, oh, we'll run a few stress tests. I said, okay, very good. So I was on the treadmill there doing my thing. And she looked at the results and said, well, that's very good. And she patted me on the head as she walked out and said, that's off you go now, run your 5K. I was expecting someone along the way to say, no, you can't do this. Why are you doing this? Which is really what a lot of other people were saying in my life. But part of the reason I do this is because I hate ageism. I'm going to prove that I can do this at this age, and really just to prove you wrong in a sense. So, but it is, and people of your own age can be very negative. It's not just people of different age groups. You can have somebody of exactly the same age saying, well, oh, at your age, I don't know why you're doing that sort of thing. Or my back's really bad. I could never do that, that sort of thing. So, it's everywhere. It's everywhere, and it drives me cracked. So one of my missions in life is to try and change people's attitudes around that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's what's needed. And I think that the more women, and I'm focusing on women because I don't think men have it the same way that women do, older women do, that it's so important just to do. You can be an advocate, and here we are talking about it, which is great. And our listeners are going to hear it, and that's great. And hopefully share that message. But just get what you're doing is so important. The fact that you're out there doing it proves the ability of older women and what they can do. It's one thing to stand and talk about it, but to actually walk the talk or run the talk.
That's right.
In your case. And even publishing your first book over the age of 50, that's a huge deal. And that's so inspirational for young writers who are frustrated, and so what I'd love to hear from you is how can you motivate yourself? So given the fact that there is so much messaging in our society about what is expected and what isn't expected of people of a certain age, how can you get motivated to shift into that second phase of your life with a lot of energy and a lot of power behind it?
Okay, I think you need to find what your passion is, and I know other people say that. And for me, when I was writing down the family stories, it was, as I said, because the family stories were disappearing as the relatives disappeared. And so it was really important to me. And I think the other thing is because I've been so close to Uncle growing up, when poor Uncle passed on, I really wanted to do it for him as well. So that was what started me. And then, as I said earlier, when I moved through the process more, to recognize where you need the help from some expert in that field. For me, it was a book writing coach. And then I needed help with setting up websites and advertising, marketing, that sort of thing. So don't ever say, oh, no, I can't do that, and just close the door. There's always somebody out there that's going to help you. So never feel you're doing it alone, because you're not doing it alone. There are always people out there that will sit down with you and they will help you through whatever block you have. And so that's really, and the other thing is, don't overwhelm yourself by saying, I'm going to write a book as good as Shakespeare did, and it's going to be wonderful, and it's going to sell 10 million copies. No, you don't do that. You start by just writing down your stories and then gradually working through the whole process. So don't jump to the end too quickly. Take it one step at a time, small steps. It took me 3 years to write my book. And there was a couple of months here and there where I wrote absolutely nothing. And my book coach says, "Excuse me, Jill, what have you done the past couple of months?" It's like, "Oh, I haven't done a thing. Oh my God, I have to do this, So set a process up that works for you. For me, I knew if there was somebody saying to me, even if it was like a one-line email saying, "How's the book going?" It's like, "Oh, I better do that. I really should do something about the book." So whatever works for you. We can all do anything, but we don't have to be the best and we don't have to be the fastest. I mean, I was the last one across the finishing line first time because of 500 people in the field. As I went through the finish line, they were taking down all the barriers behind me, So, but I have a nice story to tell about running.
But you did it.
I did it, yes. And the other thing that happens is, so those naysayers in your life, and we all have them. Once you've done a few things like, oh, Jill's published a book, Jill's run a 5K. The next thing Jill does, there's less questions about why you're doing it. And they're sitting back and thinking, oh, she did this and she did that. Like, and somebody the other day, a family member said, so what are you doing with your time? I said, well, I'm doing the podcast, I talk about the book and motivation and doing positive things in life. Oh, you're still doing that, are you? So, you just have to keep going on your own, like I say, and find your own tribe that they're going to help you through the whole thing.
Yeah, that's so important. So it's both internal motivation and external assistance. That's really important. Don't be afraid to ask for help, I think is what I'm hearing from you.
That's right. And I think that, whether you're trying to lose weight or whether you're trying to save money, yes, there's a certain amount of internal process that has to take place. You have to want to do it and you want to have to spend the time doing it. You want to have your day organized so you can work through whatever it is you need to do. But you also need that external force as well. You need people saying, how's it going? Mm. Oh, that was lovely. Giving you feedback, giving you encouragement. You need both things. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. So Jill, how can people find you? How can we get your book? Where can people connect with you on the great internet?
That's right. Exactly. It's all on the great internet now. So so I'm on Amazon.com. I'm also on .co.uk and .ca. And Lamlash Street. If you go onto Amazon and you type in Lamlash Street, LAMLASH Street, it pops up. There's an unusual name. It's actually named after a small village in Scotland. So that's where it comes from.
Okay. Beautiful.
So that, and I also have a website, which is JM Phillips. So that's all one word, JMPHILLIPS.com.
Okay.
And what else do I have? So and then I have a Facebook author page. But if you go to my, sorry, it should be author in there. I know there's something missing.
Yeah, JM Phillips
author.com. Yeah, I apologize for that. Mm-hmm. And then there's a link there to my Facebook author page where I have some blogs. And if you go onto my website, there are actually a lot of family photographs on there. Okay. I made a decision not to put them into the book, but to put them onto the website, so that you can see pictures of my auntie and my uncle and all the characters, the people in the book. Yeah. And there's a picture of my brother when he was younger and myself. And and my nan. So a lot of people I refer to in the book, there's old family photographs on there and a few words to the side so you get a sense of who they are.
Yeah, the website, which I visited, is very much like it walks you through. It's almost like a behind the scenes of the book. And it's really quite nice and just a lovely place to hang out for a while. So
the old photographs, the old memories, and it was if you're going to write a book, if you're going to write your stories down, and you're going to write a book, you have to get an author page, and then you suddenly have more value and more sense of value about your own family.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's been a great journey. Yeah.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story.
Oh, you're more than welcome. It's been a pleasure.